Hi there, I'm Arden. I found out my parents left everything they owned to my sister, every penny, every memory, while I wasn't even a footnote in their will. I stayed silent, packed my life into a box, and walked away without saying a word. But what cuts deeper than being forgotten? Before we dive into the full story, tell me, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? What time are you listening to this? And where are you watching from? Drop a comment, I'd love to know. The sun was beginning to set as I pulled into the cracked driveway of my parents' house. That familiar creak of the old front porch greeted me the moment I stepped out of my car, and for a second, a part of me still clung to the comfort of old memories. It was late spring in Austin, warm but not yet stifling, the air heavy with the smell of wood and blooming jasmine creeping along the fence. I pushed open the door and was hit by the faint scent of aging wood and dust. The living room looked the same, muted beige walls, worn plaid sofa, the grandfather clock ticking steadily, like a heartbeat belonging to someone else. My parents' house had always felt stuck in time, and somehow I'd been stuck with it. I was there to help. As usual, some paperwork for their insurance had gotten too complicated, and they needed me to sort it out. Just like they needed me to fix the leak in the roof last month. Just like they needed me when they couldn't figure out online banking. I was good for things like that, wasn't I? Tossing my bag onto the chair, I went to the dining table cluttered with papers. I started sorting them, humming under my breath to fill the silence. That's when I saw it. A thick manila envelope, slightly crumpled at the edges, labeled Last Will and Testament. My fingers hesitated above it. I shouldn't have opened it. I told myself it wasn't my business. But something, curiosity, dread, urged me on. The paper inside was heavy, the ink neat and deliberate. My eyes scanned the lines quickly, breath catching on words I didn't expect to see, and even more painfully, the ones I didn't. Everything. Every asset, the house, the savings, the car, left to Silas. There was no mention of me. No note, no letter, not even a token acknowledgement that I existed. The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the table. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving behind a hollow, suffocating silence. My hands were trembling. My heart thudded painfully slow, each beat pressing against my ribs like a warning bell. I sat down heavily, the chair creaking under my weight. It wasn't just shock, it was something deeper, something that slithered into my chest and settled there with a sickening certainty. Lorraine's voice floated in from the kitchen, cheerful and oblivious. "Arden, could you run to the store later? We're out of milk." I looked up and there she was, my mother, smiling without a care, her apron dusted with flour. I realized then that the distance between us wasn't new. It had always been there, invisible but vast, a chasm I had spent my whole life pretending didn't exist. I folded the will back into the envelope carefully, almost tenderly. I slipped it under a stack of old newspapers like it had never been touched. There was no confrontation, no dramatic accusation, only silence. A silence louder than any scream I could have mustered. I realized then, sometimes betrayal doesn't come with a bang. Sometimes it's delivered in silence, tucked between the pages of things you thought were safe. The night air clung to my skin as I pulled into my parents' driveway again, the porch light flickering against the growing dusk. I didn't want to be there. Every step toward the door felt heavier than the last, but duty had its own gravity, dragging me back into places I had long outgrown. Inside, the house was dimly lit, the yellow glow of the old lamps casting long, tired shadows across familiar walls. The faint hum of the radio buzzed from the kitchen, a jazz station, Lorraine's favorite, soft enough to make the silence louder. I set my purse down by the coat rack and wiped my damp palms against my jeans. Dinner wasn't ready yet. Lorraine called out from the kitchen, cheerful and unaware, telling me to make myself at home. I drifted into the living room, avoiding the family photos that lined the walls like a silent accusation. Out of habit, my eyes scanned the cluttered coffee table. Bills, newspapers, old magazines, and there, half hidden under a stack of unopened mail, sat a laptop. I wasn't snooping. At least that's what I told myself as I brushed the mail aside and tapped the touchpad. The screen flickered to life, the desktop cluttered with icons. An open file caught my eye, a scan labeled simply, "Final Will." My stomach twisted. I opened it. The The metadata stared back at me like a slap. Modified 3 weeks ago, just days after I had written a check to cover their roof repairs without a second thought. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the realization that even my generosity had an expiration date in their eyes. The moment it was convenient to forget me, they did. I heard footsteps and quickly minimized the window, heart hammering against my ribs. Lorraine bustled in, apron tied crookedly at her waist, chattering about Silas's latest project like she was announcing the second coming. I pasted a smile on my face and followed her to the dining room. The table was set for 4, but the conversation only had room for 3. Silas dominated the evening with his endless tales of failed auditions, misunderstood art pieces, and the cruel capitalistic world that refused to recognize his genius. Lorraine and Roy hung on every word like it was gospel, nodding and laughing at all the right moments. I cleared my throat once, twice, then tried to slip into the current. I actually got promoted last month, I said, my voice too bright, too eager. They made me lead supervisor for... That's wonderful, honey, Lorraine interrupted smoothly, already turning back to Silas. Did you tell us about that new gallery opportunity, Silas? Tell us everything. I sat there, fork poised above my plate, forgotten again. I ate quietly, the clatter of silverware filling the spaces where my voice should have been. I could hear my own heartbeat louder than the jazz, louder than the laughter, louder than the words that never came. Afterward, as I helped clear the plates, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the darkened window. I looked like a ghost, a polite shadow haunting the edges of a family that no longer had room for me, if they ever had at all. Maybe I've always been an outsider in this family. I just refused to see it. The sun bore down heavily over the backyard, making the cheap plastic chairs stick to the backs of our legs. A half-inflated balloon drifted lazily above the faded picnic table where the family gathered. From a distance, it probably looked like the perfect summer gathering. Laughter, clinking glasses, easy conversations. I sat at the edge of it all, nursing a cup of flat lemonade, feeling like a piece of furniture someone had forgotten to move inside. The heat made everything feel slower, heavier. Sweat clung to my skin and I shifted uncomfortably, trying to find a breeze that wasn't there. Across the table, Lorraine threw her head back, laughing at something Silas said. Roy wiped his brow and nodded along. Trying to join, to feel even remotely connected, I shared a story about a patient at the hospital, a light one, about a grumpy old man who secretly knitted socks for the newborns in the maternity ward. Before I could finish, Silas cut in with a loud fake yawn. God, Arden, you're always so serious, so boring, he said, chuckling like it was the funniest thing he had ever said. The laughter that followed was sharp and immediate. Even Lorraine chuckled behind her hand, and Roy gave a half-hearted grin. No one said anything in my defense. Not a word. I laughed too, a brittle sound that cracked in my chest before it even reached my mouth. I stared down at the condensation ring my cup was leaving on the plastic tablecloth, feeling 12 years old again, awkward, invisible, desperate to be seen. They moved on quickly, as if I'd never spoken at all. I swallowed the lump in my throat, and watched as Lorraine began fussing with a small cake she brought out, candles already stuck in it, waiting. Let's celebrate Silas's new opportunity, she chirped. That was when it hit me. The date, the day. Today was my birthday. I watched them crowd around Silas, singing, laughing, lighting candles for him, candles that should have been mine years ago, when birthdays still meant something. No one had remembered. No one had even thought to ask. I sat there, trapped in a chair that suddenly felt too small, too hard. The heat pressed down on me. I couldn't breathe past the ache clawing its way up my throat. I stood up slowly, brushing invisible crumbs from my skirt. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't care enough to stop me. As they sang and clapped for Silas, I slipped away, the grass crunching quietly under my shoes. I realized birthdays aren't just dates. They're proof of who remembers you and who never cared enough to. The jasmine vines clung to the fence like desperate hands as I pulled into the driveway. The scent was sweet, heavy, almost too much in the thick summer air. I sat in my car for a moment longer than necessary, watching the familiar front porch sag slightly under the weight of years. Inside, the house was still. Not peaceful, just empty, like a stage after the play has ended and everyone forgot to clean up. I had come after my night shift, still in my scrubs, bone-tired and hollowed out. Habit, more than obligation, had driven me here, picking up packages, checking bills, doing the little invisible things no one thanked me for. I found the stack of mail easily, a rubber-banded clump of flyers and envelopes thrown on the kitchen counter. As I sifted through, something was missing, a small box I'd ordered for myself weeks ago. A silver bracelet, nothing fancy, just a quiet gift for a woman who had learned not to expect them from anyone else. It wasn't there. Later, scrolling numbly through my phone, the answer slapped me across the face. A picture of Silas, arm extended for a selfie, wearing my bracelet. Captioned, "A sweet gift from my amazing parents." The room tilted for a second. I gripped the counter to steady myself. It was just a thing. Things didn't matter. That was the lie I whispered to myself. But inside, something cracked a little deeper. I moved like a sleepwalker to the small desk in the corner where Lorraine kept all the household bills. Electricity, water, gas. I flipped through them, a sick feeling growing in my gut. Each account, each recurring charge was in Silas's name. Each one had been quietly drafted from my bank account, not once, not a mistake, a pattern, careful and deliberate, running back years. I remembered all the times my mother sighed about how tight money was, all the casual requests for a little help, how easily I had nodded, pulled out my checkbook, promised to take care of it, because that's what daughters did, right? Some daughters anyway. I pressed my palms flat against the countertop, the coolness grounding me for a moment as the betrayal settled in my bones. They hadn't just taken from me, they had erased me, piece by piece, transaction by transaction, until even my generosity belonged to someone else. I set the bills back down carefully, as if they might shatter if handled too roughly. Some thefts are loud, some come wearing the faces you once trusted most. The heat was thick, pressing down on the city like a heavy hand. I sat tucked in the corner of a small cafe a few blocks from the hospital, the hum of conversations and clinking mugs swirling around me, too far away to touch. I sipped at my lukewarm coffee, my mind elsewhere, trapped in a place I couldn't seem to leave behind. I pulled up my emails, a mindless habit now, just to feel busy. In my inbox, nestled between junk and hospital memos, was a notice from the utilities company, a notice addressed to me but tied to an account I didn't even know I owned. Curiosity gnawed at me. I clicked. It didn't take long to piece it together. Silas, sweet, brilliant, irresponsible Silas, had used the money I sent. The money Lorraine had sworn was for emergency repairs, to fund a dream, a studio, a gallery, a dream that had folded in on itself in less than 6 months. No explanation, no apology, just another pile of ashes left for someone else to sweep up. And still, the requests came. My phone buzzed on the table, rattling against the chipped porcelain cup. Lorraine. I knew it was her before I even looked. Could you just help cover a few more months, sweetheart, sweetheart? As if affection could be weaponized, turned into a leash slipped so subtly around my neck I almost mistook it for love. I stared at the message for a long moment, the cafe noise dulling to a low roar in my ears. I thought of every time I had said yes without thinking, every time I had sacrificed quietly, believing, foolishly, that someday they would see me. They never would. I locked my phone and pressed it flat against the table like I could crush the disappointment out of it. Outside the window, the city moved on without me. People laughed, crossed streets, hurried through errands that didn't involve betrayal wrapped in endearments. I sat there, hands trembling just slightly, realizing something that should have been obvious years ago. It was the first time I realized love without respect isn't love at all. It's a leash. The ceiling fan spun lazily above me, stirring the humid air into a slow, sticky dance. I sat curled into the corner of my couch, the soft hum of the air conditioner doing little to soothe the agitation rising in my chest. The lamp in the corner flickered once, like it, too, was exhausted from pretending everything was fine. My phone vibrated against the coffee table, rattling a half-empty glass. Silas. I hesitated, hoping it was some kind of apology, some kind of acknowledgement, however small, that he understood. Instead, it was a demand. No greeting, no softening words, just a blunt message. Need supplies for the gallery. Send $500. Not a question, not a plea, an expectation. I read it twice, 3 times, each repetition stripping away another layer of patience. My hands trembled slightly, rage bubbling up through my veins. I wasn't even angry at the money anymore. It was the entitlement, the way he wielded it like a weapon, the way he saw me not as a person but as a resource to tap into. I locked my phone without replying, pressing the device flat against my knee as if I could smother the anger with sheer force. They never saw me. They only saw what I could give. The silence in the room thickened, oppressive, broken only by the faint rattle of the air conditioning struggling against the Texas heat. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly through my nose, grounding myself in the stillness. I wouldn't reply. I wouldn't explain. I wouldn't apologize. Not anymore. The next morning, groggy and stiff from a night of restless sleep, I made the mistake of opening Facebook. Right there, pinned at the top of Lorraine's profile, was a post. Some people forget who helped them. Family sacrifices for you, but selfishness blinds them. There was no name. She didn't need one. The comment section swelled with sympathy. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years chimed in, clucking their tongues, offering virtual hugs, praising Lorraine's unwavering love and selflessness. I scrolled past each one, my heart sinking lower and lower into my gut. Apparently, I had been recast overnight into the villain of a story I didn't even know I was starring in. I wasn't the daughter who stayed. I wasn't the daughter who paid bills in silence, who canceled trips to help with emergencies, who showed up even when it hurt. I was the ungrateful one, the selfish one, the shameful one. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles blanched. Each comment felt like a tiny needle, stitching me deeper into a narrative I hadn't written but was now trapped inside. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was war, and for once, I was ready to fight. The rain tapped steadily against the window pane, a soft, persistent drumming that filled the silence of my tiny apartment. I stirred a pot of soup on the stove, though I wasn't hungry. I just needed something to do with my hands, something that didn't involve staring into the void the last few days had opened inside me. My phone buzzed on the counter. Aunt Melody's name flashed across the screen. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked up. Her voice, warm but hesitant, filled the space between us. "I thought you should know," she said after a beat, no preamble. "You deserve to know." I leaned against the counter, bracing myself. Scrolling absent-mindedly through my notifications while she spoke, I saw it. A comment from a cousin I barely knew, laughing along with Lorraine's latest post. Some people just can't appreciate what they're given. Ungrateful kids everywhere, huh? It was like being dunked in cold water. The betrayal wasn't just from inside the house anymore. It was bleeding out into the world, staining everything. I put the phone on speaker, letting Aunt Melody's voice anchor me as she told the story. Years ago, long before hospital shifts and broken birthdays, there had been an incident at school. A vandalized project, suspicion everywhere. Silas had been responsible. A stupid, impulsive mistake. But when the principal threatened expulsion, when the scandal loomed large enough to ruin Silas's chances of anything, they needed a scapegoat. They needed someone quiet, someone compliant. They needed me. I remembered the tight grip of Lorraine's hand on my shoulder that day, the low, soothing tone she used to explain why it was better this way, why one little misunderstanding wouldn't really hurt me, why family came first. I had been 14, the scholarship I had been working for, the one that would have paid my way out of this town, out of this life, slipped through my fingers like smoke. I hadn't understood why back then, only that somehow it had been my fault. Until now. Until Aunt Melody's voice, soft and trembling, told me the truth my parents never intended for me to hear. I set the spoon down slowly, soup forgotten. I stared at the wall, feeling the years collapse inward, a silent avalanche of moments I had tried to justify, excuse, forgive. It wasn't just a pattern, it was a choice they made over and over, and I was done paying the price for it. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, casting long, sharp shadows across the porch steps. The wood creaked under my feet as I stood there, staring at the door I'd opened and closed 1,000 times before. It didn't feel like a door anymore. It felt like a line, and once I crossed it, there would be no going back. Inside, the house was oppressively quiet. Dust motes floated in slanted beams of light, and the air smelled of old wood and something sweeter, almost cloying, like memories left out too long, turning sour. I gathered the last of my things into a box, some books, a battered sweater, an old photo tucked between the pages. I didn't linger. I didn't allow myself to sink into nostalgia. That was a trap I couldn't afford anymore. Mr. Harlow's voice echoed in my mind, steady and sad. Silas had almost destroyed my future once, and my parents had helped him do it, covering it up like it was nothing more than a broken vase hidden behind a couch. A few words of truth had stripped away years of self-blame I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I glanced around the living room one last time. The worn-out couch, the crooked family photos, the dining table where so many silent dinners had stretched into aching eternity. None of it belonged to me. Maybe it never had. In my hand, the house key weighed almost nothing, and yet it had anchored me here for so long. Without ceremony, without a note, I walked to the kitchen and placed the key in the center of the table. It gleamed under the lazy ceiling fan like a surrender, or maybe a declaration. I didn't wait. I didn't call out a goodbye. I didn't check to see if anyone noticed the difference in the air as I pulled the door closed behind me. The latch clicked softly, quieter than I expected, quieter than it felt. Stepping out into the blinding afternoon light, I squinted against the harshness, against the sudden rawness of freedom. The sun was unforgiving, so was the truth. But for the first time in years, I didn't shrink from it. I welcomed it, the burn, the weight of it, because I knew I wasn't running away. I was walking toward something, even if I couldn't name it yet. Sometimes healing starts not with forgiveness, but with the simple act of leaving. The morning light slipped through the sheer curtains, casting soft golden stripes across the wooden floor. I woke slowly, the unfamiliar hush of my new apartment wrapping around me like a fragile cocoon. For a long moment, I stayed still, savoring the quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't come from fear or avoidance, but from peace. Outside, the trees in the courtyard swayed lazily, leaves tinged with the first hints of autumn. I breathed in deeply, letting the scent of fresh air, coffee brewing in a neighbor's kitchen, and the faint trace of my lavender candle seep into my senses. I was alone, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a punishment. I padded barefoot across the cool floor, curling up in the armchair by the window, an old hand-me-down I had dragged up the stairs myself. In its worn cushions, I found a strange kind of safety. My gaze drifted to the small bookshelf against the far wall, the cracked pottery on the side table, the mismatched rug. Every single thing in this space was chosen by me, paid for by me, untouched by hands that only took without ever giving back. The memory of that final walk away still lingered, sharp and bittersweet. Silas hadn't even looked up. Not a glance, not a flicker of acknowledgement. It had hurt, more than all the words ever could, but it had also freed me. I sipped coffee slowly, letting the steam fog the bottom of the window pane. Somewhere deep inside, the bruised places of my heart ached. They probably always would. Some scars never fade, they just stop bleeding. A small postcard lay tucked between a couple of unopened bills on the counter. I must have missed it yesterday. I picked it up, recognizing the neat handwriting immediately. Mr. Harlow. On the back, scrawled in steady ink, it read, "Here's to finding peace in places you never thought you'd call home." I smiled, a real one this time, even as tears pricked my eyes. I hadn't lost everything. Maybe in some strange way, I had found what mattered most, the kind of life that wasn't built on pleasing others, but on belonging to myself. I leaned back, closing my eyes, listening to the gentle rustle of the trees and the distant hum of the city waking up. Some losses clear the path for something better, even if you don't see it yet. Life has a way of teaching us the same lesson over and over until we finally listen. For me, it was learning that love without respect is not love at all. It's easy to get caught in old patterns, especially with family, the people we believe are supposed to protect us. But sometimes true strength comes from letting go, from walking away, even when it hurts. Healing doesn't always mean forgetting the past. It means learning from it, building something better, even if the foundation was cracked. We owe it to ourselves to create spaces where we are valued, not tolerated. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose peace over loyalty? What did that moment teach you? Drop a comment below. If this story touched your heart, type 1 and tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't connect with it, that's okay too. Let me know why and share where you're tuning in. If you found any part of this story meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next journey we take together. Thank you for being here, and remember, your story matters. Always.